My name is Steve Sammons, and this is my book report on Hearing God, Developing a Conversational Relationship with God. It was written by Dr. Dallas Willard. It was published in 2012 by InterVarsity Press. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to attempt to introduce you to Dr. Willard. I find it helpful if I can get to know authors personally, and with this technology, it's fairly easy to get close to them. So let me introduce you to Dr. Dallas Willard.
My name is Dallas Willard, and my work is to teach the teachings of Christ and to live them.
Dallas went home to be with the Lord in 2013 after spending 77 years here on earth. He spent 47 years of his life at USC as their professor of philosophy. He has been a best-selling author. He was a committed Christian and had a vocational strategy where he stated, if you, what he's telling himself, if you stay in the churches, the university will be closed to you. But if you stay in the university, churches will be open to you. And his professional career was a testimony to this strategy. Among the eulogies when he passed included one from USC saying, "Beloved by decades of undergraduates, Dallas was one of the most popular, versatile, and dedicated teachers the School of Philosophy has ever known." The edition of this book is an expansion of a 1995 book with the same title. The book echoes sentiments of Brother Lawrence, who in his book, The Practice of the Presence of God, wrote, "There is not in the world a kind of life more sweet and delightful than that of a continual conversation with God." The overall motivation and purpose of the book, as stated by Dallas, is for us to become a kind of people who will do what Jesus said without thinking about it. But the path to doing is to have an ongoing conversational relationship with Jesus. And this book is focused on precisely that. Dr. Willard explains in great detail why we need daily conversations with God. First, so that we can have access to the kingdom on a daily basis. The second reason is for us to improve our discernment muscle or skill. We need to be in a position where we can confidently say that we know that what it's like for God to speak. One of the other objectives Dr. Willard has for the book is to begin normalizing conversational relationships with God. He asked a question to have each of us think back and reflect on our own lives about a time when we believe God spoke to us personally. Most of us can come up with times which this has happened, but a time when God spoke to us, maybe we haven't thought about it like this, but by now we can reflect on it and acknowledge it. The idea of having a continual conversation with God is not normal by many people. Some folks have difficulty coming to terms with conversational relationships with God because they haven't been taught what it is. For others, they believe God talks to preachers, maybe even song leaders, when they say, "I believe the Lord told me to use this song." He doesn't talk to me like that. He doesn't talk in ordinary life to me. Dr. Willard continues to focus on the idea that the primary place of conversational relationships with Jesus is indeed in ordinary life. The focus on ordinary life means we need righteousness to flourish. We need the presence of Christ living in our communities and families, and above all, on our jobs. Everything really comes to focus in our work. Whether it's simple act of running an automobile shop or working in Congress to pass laws, or whatever other position you may have, righteousness needs to flourish, and it will flourish in the lives and the work of those who are listening to Christ as they go through their days, and he will certainly speak to them. Dallas paints a communication continuum regarding the variety of formats God uses, from nature to getting hit over the head with a 2x4. But one of the areas he emphasized is understanding what God's already said. We need to pay attention to it. We really do want to center our attention on the written word of God in our quest to hear God. Dallas did an interview with Richard Foster, and they talked about God speaking in dramatic ways and it being a sign of a lack of maturity. Take a listen.
The greater the expression, the more immature that is. As you develop in maturity, you don't need. It's like in my mind, I think of a horse that has learned a neck rein. It doesn't take much at all to turn.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
if
Sometimes just leaning
is enough.
Right.
If people have visions and dreams, I mean, that's wonderful, but it isn't necessarily a compliment.
No, it isn't. It's a grace in this respect that is another aspect of God's fine-tuning on this issue of distance.
Right.
Because the dramatic cases address the distance that is there in the sense of grabbing someone who might never recognize the still small voice if it came.
Yep.
But also the meaning is not so clear that the person is unable to respond to it.
Right.
And I think this is so important to understand, and it does stand out in that passage in Numbers where Aaron and Miriam get in trouble with God because of their jealousy of Moses. And I think that's one of the most important passages in coming to understand the voice, because God just explains his policy. And it starts out by saying something very important, that Moses is the most humble man on earth. And wow.
That's that character formation.
Absolutely
that
right.
opens the way.
Right. And that also, is such an illustration of the thing that turns up both in Peter and James in the New Testament, where it says God resists the proud. Well, here's old Miriam and Aaron, and they're getting resisted. But he gives grace to the humble. And he says, now, my servant Moses is not like other people, other prophets. The ordinary prophet will have a dream or a vision or something of that sort, but I just talked to Moses.
Yeah.
As we encourage each other to read the Bible, we need to help our culture read in a realistic manner. Willard works on the thought in the Bible by saying that the Bible wasn't written to us, it was written for us. And we need to gain understanding of the context of the message. It's 66 books packed into one. It's a mini library written over 1,500 years with 40 different authors. Willard points out two common problems when we don't approach the Bible in a realistic manner. The first problem is that it becomes a book of doctrine. The other problem is that we simply stop reading the Bible altogether when we don't understand the experience of biblical characters in terms of how they experienced life. This book has been very enjoyable and one that needs to be read a couple times before it starts to sink in. Thank you for your time, and send me a note if you've got any questions. Bye.